Well, hello, and welcome back to Read Becca. It's time once again for my weekly chatty catch-up on everything I read, everything I'm currently reading, and everything I'm looking forward to reading, as well as some general lifey chit-chat and catch-up. So this week I decided to take a bit of a detour in my reading to focus on books with cats. Because for Joy Reading June, we are encouraged to mood read, and that was the mood I was feeling right now. So I had some books on hand with cats in my own collection. I had some things I spotted at the library. These are the three that I ended up reading. So let's go to the first, most substantial one, and that was Cat's People by Tanya Guerrero. This is a new release, and it's definitely a contemporary fiction. So set in modern day New York, we're following Cat, as it says in the title, though it is a multi-perspective story. Cat is certainly the central character, and Cat lives on the street, is a stray. Though he's shy about people, he's not completely afraid and feral toward people. And Nuria is kind of the other central figure, and she is this human who is a volunteer caretaker for cats and rescuer who works as a barista for her job. And it's a very talented barista in the local cafe. But this is much more about Cat bringing together people in the neighborhood and Cat's connection with those people. So we don't just get Nuria, we see Omar, the local mailman who kind of goes around between all the different people. Bong, the local bodega owner who's grieving the loss of his wife. We have a sort of reclusive author who's maybe even bordering on agoraphobia, I would say. Very shut in, and looking out through his window one day, he sees Nuria feeding the cat and talking to it. And he immediately becomes kind of enamored with both Cat and Nuria. And that sort of takes over. That's the main plot of the story, is him building this connection to both of them and coming to sort of care about them without ever directly interacting because he's looking out the window. So there's a mild stalking vibe to that I couldn't quite get totally over. I kind of had to just set aside and suspend my disbelief on that. There's also a second minor stalking element regarding another character, a Southern belle who has recently moved to the city with nothing and is working as a clerk at the local grocery store, more or less. And so there are a couple of minor stalking vibes there that you just have to, there's not anything insidious to them, and so the book sort of just says, oh, well, this is okay because the motives are not insidious, but it's still stalking. So yeah, I just had to put that at the back of my brain. So anyway, we are seeing all of these people in the neighborhood be connected by Cat, and I feel like it played into some myths, but again, another thing I had to put that in the back of my brain and file away, because very much all of these people have something of a stale or lonely life in some way, and Cat comes in and connects them and enriches their life in some way as well. So that plays into the myth of crazy cat ladies have nothing else, and so they just are totally focused on cats, which is possible, and cats can be very joy-filled and enriching to your life if that is your situation, but cats can also be very joy-filled and enriching to your life if you have a great life, you know? So I hate when that happens because, being involved with the rescue community, I do know so many people who are filled with compassion and empathy and have really exciting, joyful lives and have decided to engage in that through animal rescue as well, and made cats a big part of their life, but not because they're stale and lonely lives. But anyway, that's my soapbox. So the big plot is a light romance, slightly, and the building and overcoming of barriers between these people. But I loved seeing Cat bring everyone together. And it had kind of a Sesame Street vibe a little bit to me, where it's these are the people in your neighborhood where we're jumping from one thing to another and they don't feel quite complete as people. But at the same time, there was an element of realism that I wasn't actually expecting from this book, where the people are going through real grief and real hardships in their lives, genuine struggles. They have complexity to them. So this wasn't the pure fluff that I was sort of expecting. And I was pleased by that. I tend to not really like pure fluff books. So that worked really, really well for me, I think. I loved the nuance to this, that this was thinking about animal rescue in a serious way and incorporating that while also giving kind of a delightful story. And yeah, I just was very, very charmed by Cat and the collection of people surrounding Cat. I do think that, for my liking, Cat was a little bit inconsistent as a character because Cat is not anthropomorphic. He doesn't talk or anything, but he is overly aware of human motivations at some times, and then other times the same thing that Cat understood as a human motivation before, he will suddenly not understand. And so it was a little inconsistent, but it's a cat, so I will give it a pass. So I was very delighted by the book, and I do recommend it, though I don't think it will be super memorable. So from there, I went to 3 White Cats of Avignon by Anna Bird Stewart. And this is an interesting little one that I picked up at a charity sale recently, not knowing at all what it was, and it's sort of a children's classic book. My copy says it was published in 1946, but I think this was actually just this edition of it, and the book was written earlier. So the setting seems very peaceful for that, and very, very placid. We're just following these 3 white cats, as it says on the title, as they follow their boy René around the city. The cats are Minette, and Minnie, and they're all kittens at the time that this begins, and we do sort of slightly see them grow up a little bit, but mainly this is very much an episode in their life of them taking a tour of the city, more or less, and wandering around. And it is so funny because you sort of just see them, oh yeah, it's fine, welcome these cats into this church, for instance. And so they're going to see notable locations like the River Rhone and churches and steps that are important. And it feels a little travelogue, and I think that's pretty common for children's books of the time, but it has a certain charm and humor to it. The cats only say meow, really, but we are kind of getting their thoughts, much to the previous. They're not anthropomorphized cats at all. They are cats, but they're a little overly humanized for my liking, maybe. But it was just very light and charming, easy to read, and following along on this journey through the city, seeing their misadventures, was really just a nice little bite-sized read. I found really interesting in the story, there is a little black girl they encounter and come to befriend, who is there in Avignon from New Orleans. And it's so interesting because at times she is going along with them, and other than the mention of her race, nobody acts any different toward her in the story, at least as far as we see. And I have to feel if this were placed in the US in the same time, it would be very, very different. And I couldn't stop thinking back to reading Half American last year or the year before, which is a nonfiction. And it includes some writings from Langston Hughes talking about being a war reporter and going to France and feeling more free there and more equal than he would have back home in the US. And so I was thinking about that while reading this, because it would be of a similar time period. And that was so overtly apparent to me in reading this. It was something very unexpected and very minor as far as the book goes that felt really major as a takeaway for me to read. So this really innocuous book just about cats wandering around the city with their boy had a deeper takeaway, certainly for me. So I really enjoyed this, and I'm very, very glad I picked it up. I think it will as well not be super memorable, but I'm very glad I read it, and it will be another cat book on my pile of many collectible cat things that I have, so I'm charmed. It also has some pictures. They are just little line drawings, but like we had one of the steps that I mentioned. So these are steps that they go up that have the same number of stairs as the words in the Latin Our Father. So just very cute, and I think all of them, there are no pictures of people's faces. It's like always the cats, the kittens, with people's feet around them. Very cute little drawings. So yeah, I'm very happy to have that in my collection. And then I will forecast that this was slightly less successful. This is Sōseki Natsume's I Am a Cat, the manga edition, and this was retold and illustrated by Chiroru Kobata and translated by Zack Davisson. So this was much less successful because, well, I guess on the positive, this is based off of a Japanese classic novel, and I've had that on my TBR for ages because it is a Japanese classic, and it's one of those cat books that you see around all over the place. But I'm very glad that I picked up this manga version of it rather than the novel and spend my time on the novel because I really didn't like this very much. So where to begin with this? So the first thing is that it's satire, and satire is very hit or miss for most people, and for me it was a miss, because we're looking through the eyes of a cat. This cat, at the beginning, is kind of sadly, is a very young kitten and is just sort of carelessly picked up from his mother by a student who's wandering around, and the student just carries it off from its mother and just sets it down when they're tired and walks away, and it can't find its way back to its mother. So it starts off on kind of a bad note, or a sad note, but fortunately the cat finds his way to the house of a professor, a teacher, who takes it in and takes care of it, and that family winds up being the sort of central aspect of the story. But the cat's perspective jumps between its experience of being a cat and sort of silly cat antics to it observing what's going on around it in this home and the area, mainly to do with this professor's heady philosophical conversations and the society interactions, the manners going on there. And so this satire is one of the upper class mainly, and just the really trivial and stupid things that they get caught up in, that I have to assume that this is coming from a working class perspective and the hardships of Japan at the time that this was looking at. And it just comes off very like stuffy and annoying. And I think maybe that's the intent in some way, because the things they're talking about and taking so seriously are so trivial and stupid. But it was just laborious to go through, even as a short manga that I could read in one sitting. And then, I don't want to like spoil anything, but I really, really, really hated how it ended. So I'm going to briefly like spoiler this. So if you are a person who might want to skip this one, I feel like I need to fully spoil this. Kat is sort of left alone after a session of eating and drinking, and decides to imbibe in some beer, and just keeps going in drinking this beer because of things that it's recalling from these sort of philosophizing sessions. So it pushes against its own will, more or less. And then it gets very drunk and stumbles into a water basin, and presumably, it's shown very vaguely, but presumably drowns, passes out and drowns. And that's just it. That's the end. So I don't know. It feels like that shut down any sort of wrap up to this book and any sort of critical analysis of the book, though it obviously is kind of saying how trivial and pointless this is, like what a bad steer all of this philosophizing was. But it just felt very abrupt and not analytical at all, and I didn't really appreciate it. So I'm really glad I did not invest in reading a whole novel worth of story to get to that point and be very, very frustrated with the ending. Because yeah, I was super duper frustrated. So not a winner. And this one, we are totally in the cat's perspective, and it is sort of an overly humanized cat, definitely, though it does not talk to the people. So all three of these were sort of overly humanized cats, but not anthropomorphic cats entirely. So anyway, that was it. A little mixed, but mostly good, I would say. And as I said, I am happy to have finally gotten to this story and knocked the novel off of my TBR. So that's a good accomplishment. So those are what I read this week, other than BookTube prize books. I think I am actually on track very much to finish 3 BookTube prize books, which I need to do, in the month of June successfully, which is also ahead of where I usually am most of the time, and I will have finished my biggest one. So that puts me in perfect track for finishing all my BookTube prize books easily ahead of the end of July, as I need to. So as far as what I'm reading ongoing, as I said, I still have a little bit left in my 3rd BookTube prize book to finish, and then that will hopefully be done today or tomorrow. And I am reading The Princess Bride for my book club in person, which I have never read before, but it is very, very funny. So enjoying that one so far. And I don't know where I'm going to go next. I still have a couple of TBR books that I haven't gotten to from this month, and yeah, I just have not really decided what I'm going to pick up. So that's exciting. In my weekly watching wrap-up, I did finish off a couple of things that have been ongoing. So the first was Welcome to Wrexham, a sports docuseries about Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds having set up this docuseries to follow. They're buying a Welsh football team that was very much at the bottom and working to bring it some success. And success has definitely happened. So this season, we're coming off of a really big, unexpected, major success in the previous season. And this season, they decided to sort of moonshot and try to get success nobody thinks they could achieve, more or less. And so that just finished out, and you see how that comes out. And I have just loved this show so much because it is very much about the human stories more so than the sports. The sports are really fun and exciting, and you can be spoiled every single season easily. If you care about the sport, it has happened already by like months. But I never follow it for the sport, so I don't really care if they win or lose so much, though obviously you do get behind that aspect. I much more care about the community building that's going on in this series, because they have done such a great job of really investing in people's lives, investing in growing the community and building business there and the overall success of the people of Wrexham. And that's just been so great to see. So it's very, very, very feel good. And on the flip side, I was watching House of Knives. So for some reason, a bunch of Food Network shows that are recent have began showing up on Hulu. So I'm taking advantage. I don't know how long they're going to be there. So House of Knives is the first one of those that I watched, and very much enjoyed it. I had seen, I think, one and maybe half of the episodes at the gym, because the gym now has a Food Network as well. But I'd seen some of this before, but it's a really cool setup. It is your usual reality cooking competition type of show, but it's got a little bit more of a strategy dynamic to it, because everyone goes head to head, or not head to head, that's one on one. Everybody competes initially in a first round, and then somebody ends up on the throne, and you have to have sat on the throne in order to make it into the finale. And then the second round in each show is somebody winning and being able to challenge the person on the throne. And so then you have that head-to-head. And either somebody gets kicked out or somebody dethrones the person on the throne, and they both are just back in the pool, more or less, and whoever unseats the person on the throne gets on the throne. So there's a certain amount of strategy there, though, because they do need to sit on the throne, but if they win the initial round and are allowed to challenge the person on the throne, they can put somebody else in. They can send somebody to challenge the person on the throne. So they can force somebody else to be in threat, or if they haven't sat on the throne, they can do it themselves. So they have to kind of pick the right time before the final to do that. So I like the aspect of it having some strategy to it beyond just simply you're always cooking. And also, interestingly, Chef Anne Burrell is in this series, and she's a very prominent reality show competitor. I did also just start Barbecue Brawl, which she is one of the sort of team leaders for that. There are 3, and she recently passed away, apparently. So I kind of randomly saw that just after I had started watching the show. And so it's interesting that she is showing up in all of these shows that I'm watching recently on Food Network, and then she also just recently passed away. So sad to get invested in her work very much more than I have had a chance to, because I know she's been in a lot of competitions, but I haven't seen a ton of them. I'm very familiar with her face though, but now I'm seeing all of these and there won't be more, which is very, very sad, because she was a really, really talented chef. So those are what I watched this week. Onward to my week. My week was very busy, but not with anything really of note. Honestly, I think the most of note thing is that it's been ridiculously hot. It's been so hot. I've been keeping it continued fairly dark in here, and you can't really tell because I've got the light on, and it looks like it's bright outside. It's actually completely overcast and raining out right now. But we randomly had massive heat all week, which I think I talked about last week. And then yesterday, Friday, it suddenly out of nowhere and unplanned had a storm roll through and just poured rain, was really windy, and the temperatures dropped very, very briefly. But now on the heels of that, we're supposed to get a couple of days of rain. And that means it's just continuously ridiculously humid. So I can't even walk outside without my glasses just fogging up, and it's so disgusting outside. It's horrible. So nothing can be done outdoors at all, really, at this point. It's just really, really gross. But I'm enjoying my AC indoors, and my cat reading has very much helped to get through this week. So we're just continuing to persist on. And yeah, I mean, really nothing exciting has been happening for me, so, which is probably a good thing. And I guess that is all other than recommendations. And I have one recommendation for this week. So I'm going to recommend Dan Casey of Geek and Sundry, kind of a very nerdy focused channel, did a interview with Tim Clare, who is sort of a journalistic nonfiction writer. Recently wrote a book on board gaming and the history of board games. And so I really enjoyed the history aspects that they talked about a lot, but also, more importantly, he talks about, as part of writing this book, he kind of encountered the fact that, yes, this is a very nerdy thing, board gaming in modern day, but a significant subset of that is autistic gamers. And so he went and got checked for autism himself, expecting it to just be this journey of him getting told he doesn't have autism. And then he got an autism diagnosis, and it completely changed his perception of himself and of autism as well. And so hearing him talk about that as this sort of surprise journey that he went through in the process of writing this book was very, very cool. And so now I also want to read that book really, really badly. So I think that will probably be after my BookTube Prize nonfiction reads, but I really, really want to get to it. And I can't remember the title of the book, but it's something on history of games, so I'll try and put a picture up here. So anyway, definitely check out that discussion because it was very, very good. So I'm sure that has been too much rambling as usual. Hopefully this was not overly tedious and the cat books kept you entertained. But that is all for me today. So I will say I hope you have a wonderful week in reading and in life, and thank you so very much for watching.